Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Labyrinth, a podcast produced by Virtual Executive Director. My name is Becky Brett, and I'm your host. I'm an intuitive executive coach for artists, content creators, and entrepreneurs. This week on the podcast, I get to walk the labyrinth with Kimra Luna. But before Kimra and I dive into what it means to seek pleasure, I want to remind you that as we near the end of 2020, the time is right to clear out the energetic trash from this year and set intentions for the new. Using the mantra of the labyrinth as a guide, which is release, receive, return, I work with clients one-on-one to release the habits, thought patterns, and relationships that no longer serve them, receive new behaviors, beliefs, and supportive relationships, and then return to integrate these into their lives by setting and holding boundaries, practicing new behaviors, and supporting them through the inevitable setbacks. Because as we know, transformation is not a straight path. If you're interested in working with me, DM me for an application. And once you fill it out, I'll take a look at it. And if I think we'll be a good fit for each other, I'll set up a quick call with you. Now, don't worry about the call. It's not a high-pressure sales situation because I'm the one interviewing you. All right, a bit about my guest this week. Kimra Luna is a cosmic sensuality coach and pleasure activist. She is the founder of the Cosmic Connection Coven community on Discord and is the host of the Riot Doll podcast. Her podcast and Twitch channel cover topics on self-healing, sex, love, relationships, music, sensuality, self-love, psychology, and activism. Her program, Slowing the F Down, helps you discover your deepest desires, connect with your personal pleasure, and shed the shame so you can channel your inner creatrix and live the life you deserve. Kimra has been featured in Forbes, Inc. magazine, and the New York Times, and she's been interviewed on over 100 podcasts. She is a single mom to 3 boys and spends her free time going to punk shows and making vegan food for her family and friends. You can find her work at kimraluna.com. Please welcome into the labyrinth, Kimra Luna.
So
I love it.
My gifts are my love language, though. So
okay.
Yeah. I didn't know that it was, and then I was like, "Why am I so weird at birthday parties?" And then I'm like, "Oh, that's why I love."
You're
gifts.
not weird. You're being authentically you.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but it is weird when people are just like from the other side of the restaurant, like, "Dang, that girl's loud," you know.
And so tiny. Like how?
One time, Selena Sue bought me these soaps that look like cupcakes.
Oh, like, no way.
This is the best thing I ever got in my life because I love little things. Like I'm a big fan of little things. And then it was like little tiny cupcakes that smelled like cupcakes. And she's like, I even made sure that they were vegan. I was like, oh, you're the best gift giver ever, Selena Sue. Like it was great.
That is awesome. Okay. So let us step into the labyrinth. I am entering the labyrinth with Kimra Luna. Let's talk about, tell everyone a little bit about what you do right now.
So, hey, everyone, I'm Kimra Luna. I primarily support people in sensuality. I am a pleasure activist, and I really believe that the more we tap into our pleasure, the more we tap into who we really are as a person, and the more we heal our wounds, and the more we're able to have better relationships.
Awesome. And have you always been like this? Into pleasure and sensuality and that sort of positivity?
It's came and gone throughout my life. Like it was very much like a closed off thing for me as a kid. I didn't really understand. I didn't even understand what the word joy meant or anything. Like I really hadn't felt that as a kid and as a teenager and even into my adulthood. And then when I had my first son, that was kind of like the first time I felt like pure love and pure happiness and pure joy. And that was when I kind of began this healing journey that ended up leading me to, wow, when you could just start feeling pleasure throughout your day, that's healing in itself. You know, it doesn't take like this insane amounts of therapy and all of these things. Certainly that works for some people, but for myself, it's been more, you know, feeling into my own body, doing embodiment practices, and that ends up doing, like you were talking about earlier, like that release that needs to happen when it comes to things that we're working on processing. And a lot of therapists don't really go into like your actual body, and science now shows that the body holds all of our wounds. And so pleasure can be simple thing from just rubbing lotion on your hands. It doesn't have to be like, like, oh my gosh, I need to have some gigantic orgasm or something. It
Right,
can
an hour-long
really be
session with a vibrator. And
yeah, it doesn't have to be that. And even a lot of times that's not even that much joy for some people. Sometimes just getting their feet massaged is actually a way more joyful, pleasurable experience than even that. So sometimes just taking a shower you're like, oh my gosh, just feeling the relief of being in the shower and this warm water flowing over my body. And so pleasure, there's a lot of interpretations of it. Most people always think it's like, I just talk about sex. Sex is a piece of it, but typically when you're finding pleasure in other ways of your life, the stuff around the sex actually gets a lot easier.
Ooh, can we talk more about that? So can you define pleasure a little bit more?
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more, and then what do we? Well, let's start with defining pleasure and see where that takes us.
So with pleasure, for each person, it's really different, but it has a lot to do with our senses, right? And we spend so much time outside of our bodies as humans. We're just attached to our phone, and we're watching Netflix all day, or even worse, watching the news all day, and we're doing these things that are really outside of our body, and we're not really tuning into our body. And we have our senses for a reason. They give us signs. They tell us, oh, that smells good. That smells bad. Like our senses are really the thing that gives us joy, right? When we have like I have nice smelling candles, I have one lit right here. Like it's one of those things where it uplifts me. And so pleasure is really anything that gives you like these senses where you're like, wow, I feel better. And it's just, and sometimes it even lasts just for a second, but having more of those parts in your life, that's where you're like, wow, I'm living in a state of pleasure. And when you can have more of that throughout the day, even if just driving your car and listening to music is pleasurable, soak in the pleasure, don't just mindlessly be thinking about the things. Be like, wow, this song is really giving me pleasure right now. This person has a beautiful voice. This music is giving me goosebumps. Right?
What tends to block us from experiencing pleasure?
I think the addictions to the outside things. We think that, getting the likes on our Instagram post, and we're like checking it to see how many likes we get, like trying to get those like dopamine hits and sometimes serotonin hits, depending on certain things. Like we kind of have this addiction to like filling our brain, but our brain wants to be attached to our body, but it's almost like it's separate because of the world that we live in. We're not in a world where people like tell you when you're a little kid, hey, like, let's feel grounded. What does that feel like to you? What does it feel like to feel the gravity on your body? People don't say that to people. Like that's not like a normal conversation you have with like a 7-year-old child, right? And so we literally don't even learn these things. And like every single culture around the world, when it comes to healing, has things around your body. Like if you think about Native American cultures, they do a lot of jiggling and sounds and things like that, where those are actual healing, and they've actually scientifically proven it to be. And the science is finally starting to catch up with a lot of these, practices from a lot of ancient cultures. And it's and even some of them are even current cultures because they're still around. And it's just really interesting to see that the science is finally catching up to like what pleasure is. And even when it comes to sexual pleasure, there's still a lot of debate around like what's pleasure, because it's so close to the same thing that's activated in our brain as pain. And so there's still doing a lot of studying on it. There's a lot of books and resources and things out there online. If you just look at like, pain and pleasure, just like Google it, you'll find articles about it. But they're so close. They're really interlinked. And so I think we kind of focus more on the pain side of things. And it's like not far off from pleasure, which is very interesting, but it's like our brain wants to keep focusing on the pain for some reason. And I think that's partly a protection mechanism for ourselves, or a way to defend ourselves from things, or because our brain does a really good job at protecting us. And
Yes.
sometimes going for pleasure isn't like a natural state our brain goes for. We have to actually choose to go for it. And once people begin choosing, they're like, oh my gosh, like it's like they're living in a different world than the world that they were currently living in.
It's like we can't believe we can actually feel good.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Am I allowed to feel good?
Yeah, and there's a really great book called Pleasure Activism. It's just all around pleasure activism, and it talks about how our society has made it wrong for us to feel pleasure. It's actually like pressed it upon us, like you're not supposed to feel pleasure. You're not supposed to feel joy. You're only supposed to feel pain and fear. And, and then when we have so much pain and fear and then we get to anger, then people are like, oh, you're just angry. Why do you feel that way? And stuff like that. It's like, there's all this stuff around emotions and the way we feel that it's all conflicting information our whole lives. And then when we become adults, it's like, especially when we start having our first sexual experiences, we don't even know really what pleasure is. Like, wait, did that feel good? Did that not feel good? Like we're kind of like we still don't even really know. And that's because when we're children, people aren't spending time showing us what things are actually enjoyable and teaching us go towards the things that give you joy and away from the things that don't give you joy.
Well, and you, over the past couple of years have gone away from things that didn't give you joy. Can we talk a little bit about your transition from digital marketing maven to sensuality coach?
Yeah, it's been like a long journey. I mean, I used to do more healing work and such even before I had like my big digital brand. I also had a vegan mommy blog. So I've kind of done a lot of transitions. I feel like I'm Madonna, it's like like I have just like these seasons and I just change. And with the digital marketing world, it's like I still have some joy in it, but it's like it wasn't like what I wanted my legacy to be. And so when I started thinking about my legacy and I'm like, well, what am I going to be known for? Like, it's like when I'm 50, 60, 70 years old, like, what are people going to say about Kimra Luna? And I was like, do I want them to say like, Kimra is the best digital marketer in the world? No, that's not absolutely what I want people to say. Like, but if people say when I'm 67 years old, oh, Kimra helped me tap into my pleasure. That was like, okay, this is it, and so I became certified in a lot of different certifications. I'm now trauma certified. And so I work through a lot of things with my new clients, and some of that I've been tying into business coaching. So now I've been supporting people with business coaching and working through traumas and teaching them how to find pleasure in their daily life. A lot of people become workaholics to kind of avoid pleasure. It's really interesting how we avoid pleasure so much. Like even in our own businesses, we're like, we just do what we think we should do. And I have found that the people in business who follow their pleasure the most and follow the things that bring them joy, they actually have the most success. And when I was building my business, particularly around like the Be True Brand You program, I had so much joy in the teaching. I love being on a webinar teaching. Like, it seems weird. People are like, why would you love that? But I really genuinely do. I love getting that feedback from people. I love interacting with people that way. And actually, I prefer it even than interacting with people in person. Like, I prefer to do it online because I get nervous, and I feel less nervous through a camera. It's definitely one of those things where now those things tie together. And eventually, eventually I'm hoping in the next year, I won't necessarily be doing a lot of the business coaching side of things and move more into just focusing on pleasure, but I'm still developing those programs. So as I'm working with people one-on-one, I'm figuring out how to develop more like digital programs and things like that. So I have my Slowing the F Down program, which literally teaches what it says to slow the F down and tap into our bodies and feel our joy and have somatic experiences. So that's kind of like my simple program that I'm starting right now. I host, live calls on it because that's kind of the easiest way for me to create content right now with like all my kids home all the time. And I can just set it in the schedule and make sure they have a babysitter at that exact time. It's a little bit easier for me. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey to transition, but I feel it's always been part of me. Like, it's not not like it's like, oh, this is just like some brand new thing. It's around the topics I've always really cared about. And especially as a person who is a survivor of sexual abuse and rape, it's a really, really important piece of my life to be able to help people in this way. Several of my clients have experienced sexual assault, and it makes me feel so much joy to be able to know that I'm supporting them and helping them tap into, being able to even feel their own body, because a lot of them, they don't even like touch at all after those experiences. And so being able to get them to a point where they can actually appreciate a hug from a person is a really, really big deal for them. And it gives me so much joy to be able to see those transformations happening literally right before my eyes.
Yeah. What would you say would be like the top, I don't know, 3 to 5 or however many you feel like saying, things that are helpful to release in order to feel pleasure?
Yeah, one is just the fact that pleasure is wrong. That's, again, it's something that's kind of ingrained in us, particularly in women, that it's wrong to experience pleasure. It's wrong to experience joy. There's even shame around owning a sex toy, and things like that, something that can actually give you some pleasure and some joy, and sometimes an easier way than some other ways. Sometimes we're a little bit more comfortable, and sometimes we even feel more safe with that toy than with another human. And so like kind of letting go of that pleasure is just something that's like wrong, or it's like not good. And that can take a lot of dismantling, especially if people are raised in very religious households. I've noticed a lot of religious shame around pleasure, even though the Bible doesn't directly say women shouldn't have pleasure. There's a lot of those things kind of taught in church where other people's pleasure is more important than the woman's pleasure. So letting go of some of that. Another piece is just being okay with being in your body. And oftentimes our bodies, we have so many of these beliefs about it. Oh my gosh, there's too many rolls, there's too many wrinkles, like our hair doesn't look good today. And so we have all of these things. And as we can start just like looking in the mirror and accepting and saying, this is my vessel, this is my body, this is what's taking me through this life, and begin to having some appreciation for that body. As you can get more and more appreciation for your body, that's when pleasure becomes a lot easier. And it was very difficult for me to even look in the mirror when I first started these practices. Like I would look in the mirror and just sob and cry. And so what I ended up doing is I actually signed up for a stripper class, like to learn how to do like sensual dance. And I signed up for it privately because I was like, I don't think I could do this in a group. Like I'd be like so freaked out because I was having such a hard time looking in the mirror. And I signed up for this class, and the instructor, she said a lot of women, when they start doing this, they're sobbing because they've never looked at their body in a sexy way. They've never appreciated their curves. They've never appreciated their breasts. They've never appreciated their arms and legs. And she's like, she's like, it's almost like I became a therapist in a way. Like this has become a therapeutic thing to teach women how to sensually move our bodies. And movement is one piece of it. And we don't move a lot. Oftentimes we're sitting in our chair, we're at our desk, and that's the only movement we do is typing, like we're really not moving in our bodies. So another way is just start moving your body. I don't care if it's roller skating. I don't care if it's going for walks. It doesn't really matter what it is. You can start hula hooping in your house. It doesn't really matter. Is start doing something that can move your body. It doesn't have to be some strenuous, workouts where you're like going to become a bodybuilder or something. It can be just stretching on your bed in the morning and feeling what your body actually feels like. Roller skating is actually a really great one because of that balance. Like you're really tuning into your body when you're thinking about, wow, I have to balance and lean my body this way, lean it a little bit more back so I don't fall, or lean it a little forward, or I have to bend my knees a little bit so I don't fall. Like you have to be really mindful of your body. Other things, like yoga, any sort of calisthenic sort of things, like even just thinking about like, okay, I'm laying down and now I'm sitting up. What's happening? My abs are getting tight. Okay, they're getting tighter. They're tight. Oh, now I'm sitting up. Now I can actually kind of relax a little bit because my body's sitting up and I'm more used to that position. Like it's just those little bits of that mindfulness that really matter and can start getting a person start tapping more into pleasure. Oftentimes, my clients actually start doing a walking routine And that's like their first kind of step to just moving their body, because a lot of people, they don't want to like work out or put pressure on themselves to like start a workout routine or something. And so it's like, well, let's just start a walking routine. Keep it really simple. It doesn't even overcomplicate it. Put the kid in the stroller and just go for a walk. And it only has to be 1 or 2 minutes a day. But while you're walking, be like, wow, my feet are touching the ground. There's gravity beneath my feet. Like my body moves in a certain way to make sure I can walk and go one step in front of the other. So it's really about just being mindful of how our body is moving. Whether you can even do it when you're washing the dishes, like, wow, my hands are going over this plate, and I'm putting this plate into the dishwasher. It's just simple movements and things you're doing and just being mindful of them. One practice that I really love is in the shower, just really actually feeling your body in the shower. I'm like, don't use like the loofah, put the soap on your hands and actually feel your skin. You have this beautiful, magical skin that's holding all your organs in, like it's literally like it has a function, like you have this skin, it's holding everything in, and maybe there's some hair, or maybe there's a few bumps, or maybe there's some wrinkles, but those are all okay. That makes us human, right? And all these things are really simple. And I love doing that, like in the shower. I'm just like, wow, I really appreciate my knees right now. I really appreciate my thighs right now, because sometimes my knees will hurt. And I'm just like, man, it sucks that they hurt. But you know what? I'm glad I at least have knees, like, because if I didn't have knees,
that'd be awkward.
There'd be something else going on here. But just showing appreciation for your own body.
Yeah.
It's so crucial. And signing up for that sensual dance class, I mean, it completely changed my life. I went to 3 sessions with the coach, and she was an actual stripper in New York City, and she was like super freaking hot. And I was just like, it was like intimidating, but she was very kind, and she was like, yes, like move your body this way, move your hips that way, put your knee this way, like, and was really just guided my body. And I felt like it was just so powerful. And I've heard people have similar experiences, like if they take a private yoga class or private Pilates and things like that, like, or even just going to physical therapy. Like maybe you're a person who has lots of aches and pains and back problems and things. And so you're like, oh, I don't want to like start all this workout routine or something. Go to a physical therapist. Be mindful of your body and how things are moving. Move your joints. Like that's really so important. And then that leads into being able to accept pleasure, to be able to accept touch. Touch is so crucial for pleasure, but oftentimes we're so constricted and we can't even accept touch if we can't accept our body.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it means to receive pleasure. So if we're going along with the mantra of the labyrinth, we've talked a lot about what to release and sort of what mindset to release, what beliefs aren't working for us anymore, that sort of mindlessness, that sedentariness. So what does it mean? What does it mean now to receive pleasure once we've gone through all of that?
I mean, it's different for everybody. Some people's experience is very slow with it. Like a lot of my clients, they first start by going out and actually getting a massage. And that's kind of like the first way they can accept it. Some people, they might already be in a relationship, but maybe they're having a hard time with that intimate part of the relationship. And so going and paying a professional to touch your body and receiving that care and that touch is so powerful. Like it's amazing how a massage can transform a person's life. And just having somebody touch you, rub your feet, touch places on your body that you might not even ever touch, like the back of your thighs, or places where you're like, wow, like I have thighs back there, like it's like, it just brings a different awareness to it. And when you start being able to receive, that's when the actual, like, even the sexual pleasure and things like that are much easier to happen. And from a person who had been, assaulted, and I did have a lot of issues with that, I would clench up and clam up and like be like unable to just be open for pleasure. And so as you're like on this journey moving towards that, I always recommend hire someone to touch your body, whether it's just a cranial massage, whether it's to go get a facial done, like anything where other people can touch your body. do it. It's totally worth the money to invest in something like that, invest in your own pleasure. And that's another thing, is there's a lot of shame around investing in your own pleasure. Like, oh,
Yeah,
I
let's
shouldn't
talk
waste
about
money
that.
on getting a massage. And I'm just like, yeah, but it's gonna make your whole body feel better. Oh, I shouldn't waste money on going to the chiropractor. Yeah, but it's gonna make your whole body feel better. Like people don't put the value in our bodies feeling great, right? And there's a little bit of that shame, like, well, I should spend that on my kids, or I should spend that on this other thing, or, well, I have debt, so I should just put my money towards the debt. And I'm just like, you know what, the debt's still going to be there even if you get a massage, so just go get the massage, like, just get it,
Right.
and
You're
so
not gonna get out of debt from $100 design
yeah,
yourself $100 massage. Like, that's not gonna
yeah, and
be
that
what breaks it for
massage,
you.
if you're feeling great, you might book a few more clients or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like get yourself to start feeling really great, and start looking for those things that bring you a lot of pleasure. I find people that are really turned off from like getting a massage. It's often because they don't feel their body, and that's why I tell a lot of people start in the shower, because that's when we're pretty comfortable with ourselves in the shower. We just like wash our body, like, okay, it's our body, And so a lot of times starting in the shower of just like, oh, I'm rubbing my hands, I'm rubbing the soap between my hands, and just being mindful of our bodies, and then gradually easing your way into allowing other people to touch your bodies. And if you're somebody who is partnered, has a spouse or something, do this with them, and even ask them, hey, where do you want to be touched? You'd be surprised. Someone's like, oh my gosh, I love having my knees massaged. I'm a person, I love having my knees touched. I don't know what it is. I'm just like, touch my knee, please, for the love of God, somebody touch my knees. Like I just love it. And it's not even like a sexual thing. It just feels nice for some reason. I don't know, like my knees just get stiff or something. And so it's like just being aware of like, wow, where do I actually like being touched? Do I really love my ears being touched? Do I like my neck being touched? Or does that throw me off? And I'm like, I don't want my neck touched. Let other people know, like, hey, please don't touch my neck, and I've had partners who've literally told me, oh, I don't like being touched. Okay, great. I just never touch them there. That's okay. And maybe one day they'll be okay with it, but if they're not right now, that's fine. And having a partner where you can talk to like openly is a huge thing. And so bringing that partner in on that journey of maybe asking them first, hey, how do you want to be touched? And then they're like, oh, wait, well, how do you want to be touched? Let's have a conversation.
Let's talk about that communication element, because communication is it's key to everything. So how can we talk about pleasure? And I don't know, like maybe some people feel weird using even the word pleasure. Like, how can we talk about it without it being weird and awkward?
Yeah. So if you feel weird about the word pleasure, I just say feel good, like that's, like moving towards feeling good. And when it comes to talking to a partner, it really does take a partner who actually is mindful. I find if your partner isn't open for these sorts of things, they might not be the most optimal partner for you in the long run. Because if you're unable to communicate how you want your body to be touched, when touch is such important piece of most relationships, not all, but most, and you're unable to communicate that, and they don't want to communicate that, they might not be the most optimal person to be being intimate with to begin with, and sometimes it's hard for people to hear, but I'm like, if your boyfriend doesn't want to know how you want pleasure, why is that your boyfriend? Like to me, those things it's a very important piece of a relationship, and it seems honestly kind of rude for them to not want to know, like, why wouldn't you want to know how I can feel good, during our experiences together. And so a big piece of it is finding that partner who is open to communicate, and just saying like, hey, you know what? Like, I've really just been thinking lately, I really want to have amazing sex. Like, I want it to be like, you know what? This is so incredible. Can we just have a conversation where maybe we write down like 2 places where you really want to be touched the next time that we get intimate? And just make it fun, like just 2 things. Text me 2 things that you really, want me to touch next time. And then the next time, then they're kind of like, there's anticipation for it. Like, oh, they're going to touch me there, ooh. Like, so it can build up some anticipation. It can be really fun and flirty. And if your partner has touched you in ways that you really like, let them know. So, you know what, last time when we did this, I really liked that. that actually helps build their confidence as well. So then if there is something that comes up where maybe you didn't like a certain way they touched you, you just redirect in a gentle way, because people's egos do get hurt during this process too. And so it's like, hey, like, you know what, next time rub more over here, a little less over here, more over here. That's what I like. And it does take a bit of practice to get more confident at this. Most people are very embarrassed when they first do it. Everybody's blushing, even if it's a partner they've been in for a long time, and most people, at least if they're somewhat, nice person, they're going to be like, yeah, I would like to have this conversation, like let's make this really great. I haven't met anyone that's like, no, I don't want great sex, like that. Just,
I don't want to feel good ever.
I don't want to feel good. Like, I don't want to feel great after this experience. Like, no, most people do. And especially if they already are, in a partner relationship. And so it does take a little bit of bravery to do it, but it's worth it in the long run, so that because sometimes resentment can build up and things like that. If one person maybe is receiving a lot more pleasure than the other person's feeling like they're not, a lot of resentment can build up, and then there's more distance in the relationship, and then nobody wants to touch anybody, and and things like start breaking down. And a lot of relationships can actually be mended just by having these simple conversations. And that was something that I wish I would have known. I became a sex, love, and relationship coach. I became certified, and when I started learning all these things as I was being certified, I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. If I would have actually started saying what I needed, and not only in the pleasure part of the relationship, but in all areas of relationship, I think my relationships would have turned out a little bit better, at least not have turned into like an explosion, and so it definitely takes some really good communication practice. But there's a lot of things like online where you can Google how to talk to my husband about what I want in bed, and there's a lot of different articles and things that give kind of simple tips, but a lot of it actually is flirting. You can actually be very flirty with it and be fun with it. And then your partner's like, oh, wow, what are you talking about this stuff? And they're just like, okay, sure, I'll touch you there, all right, when are we doing this? So sometimes it can become a really flirty experience as well. So a lot of people are scared of it at first, but I find, especially if it's a woman talking to a man in a heteronormative relationship, typically the man is pretty receptive when you say, hey, I really want you to, rub my breast in this kind of way. They're like, oh, really? Yes, please do that. And they're like, oh, okay. Let's go, And so it because they're not used to that communication in that way, where you're just telling them hey, I really like this, let's try it. And they're like, oh, all right. So, and I've definitely learned my lesson in that way. And now I'm very much more open and clear about my communication. Cause there's certain parts of me, I don't want to touch. I don't really like my feet being touched. I'm like, please don't touch my feet.
What? I'm not a feet person. I just posted about this either yesterday or a couple days ago. I'm like, I always have my feet covered. I don't want to deal with my feet.
Yeah, it's like I don't touch them. Even if I go get a massage, I don't want them to touch my feet. I say, can you please not touch my feet? So sometimes they're just places as we don't want to be touched, and that's okay. It's all about community.
Can we talk about slowing the F down?
Yes.
So as we integrate, as we've released what we need to release, and then we're able to receive pleasure again. Tell me about slowing the F down.
Yeah, so this program actually developed just based off of my own experience. I started growing my previous business very rapidly. It grew to a 7-figure business in 18 months. And then we did, 7 figures every single year. And it was just huge, but it was so fast. It was too fast, too soon. It was too much. It was too all the things. And because it was going so fast, it ended up having a lot of burnout for me. And especially because I went through a divorce. And so going through that divorce, it kind of forced me to slow down. And then I started realizing oh, I don't have to be Speedy Gonzalez 24 hours a day, which is actually one of my nicknames. Another nickname is Energizer Bunny. So, they're very fitting, right? Yeah. But I don't have to be that part of me all the time. I don't have that part of me serves me. It's part of even my personality. It's the part of the way I work. Like on the Colby assessment, I'm a quick start. I'm the person that's just like, I mean, even today, I'm just like, hey, like, let's do this workshop. I already whipped up the graphic, like already posted it on Instagram, like 10 minutes later, like it's ready to go. Like I'm very much a quick start, but I had to learn to really just slow myself down. And that turned into a lot of the embodiment practices that turned into working on the self-pleasure. My do not disturb is on, so I don't know why that beeped. It turned into the different sorts of, pleasure practices that I began for myself. I actually put myself on like a 14-day self-pleasure practice where I actually blocked off an hour of time where I just focused on my body. I recognized, do I like hot? Do I like cold? Things like that. And so inside of the program, all of the practices that I've been doing for myself and for my clients throughout the past 3 years, I have workshops every single Friday, or 4 Fridays a month. And on those workshops, we do those things together. So you actually have someone who's guiding you through different somatic practices, breath work practices. We have like a sensuality dance practice that we do. And that one's really fun because we take turns seducing each other. That's what I call it. So it's like you 4 people. Okay, it's your turn to dance. So your job is to seduce these other 4 people. And it's, it's a lot of women and everybody's very open for it. Obviously, you can have your camera off if you want. Like I'm not a person like you must have your camera on. We must watch you. But then that one's really fun. And then we also have one of the calls where people join on and they can be anonymous. So these are all like paid members of the program, but they can come on anonymous and put a nickname. And so they can just ask questions in the chat. So maybe they have experienced some sort of trauma and they're looking for books or resources, or they're looking for the right sort of therapist that would work for them. Or maybe they just have things that they just need to vent about, because I feel like we don't have a lot of really safe spaces that are non-judgmental spaces where we can vent. And that was something I wanted to include in the program, because when it comes to say, like, even our own friend, we can ask for advice from our own friend, but oftentimes they come from this judgmental space because they know the people that you're talking about, or they've known you for 20 years or whatever. Yeah. And so they come from this judging space. And it's not even necessarily a negative type of judging space, but they have judgments about the situation, right? And so going into a space where people can let things out, release those things, and start being able to process. I'm a person where I have to verbalize to process. I literally have to talk things out, whether it's for planning stuff for business, or figuring out a parenting thing I want to do, or whether it's, if I should make a Instagram post, like, it's like, I really have to like talk myself through things. And I recognize that in a lot of my clients. A lot of them is more just holding space for them and allowing them to let some of those things out. And then it's like, okay, now let's tune in and regulate our nervous system. So that this experience didn't re-traumatize us in some way, because that's very common in especially talk therapy. A lot of people re-traumatize themselves, but sometimes we still need to verbally release it. Like, people will literally feel tightness in their throat because they're not verbally releasing some of these things that need to be released. But I also have it where they can actually type and send me a message, and I post it anonymously for them. So I allow a lot of that anonymousness in it. I use a platform called Discord, and people can use pen names on there. So you don't have to use your real name. It's not like a Facebook group. And that was something I found with Facebook groups, is a lot of people, especially say someone who, highly successful in business or things like that, they might not want to have people knowing about traumas or things they've gone through, or things they're trying to heal, or the fact that they haven't been able to have an orgasm and they're 45 years old, or whatever it is that's going on with them. And being able to have it be in an anonymous space actually helps it be safer for those people. They have less fear of like, oh my gosh, someone is just going to screenshot this and start talking crap about me or something.
Right. Yeah.
So safe space is very important when it comes to pleasure.
Absolutely. So can we talk a bit about the cosmic aspect?
Yeah. So the cosmic aspect, that word really, because I do a lot of intuitive work and I feel all people, like, I mean, we are literally made of stardust, we are literally made of stars. And so it's like, we are all these cosmic beings and we're navigating this world in this physical plane and these physical vessels that we are in. And so that kind of adds a little bit of that, I guess, mystical element to it. I've been a healer my entire life and I'm just highly intuitive. And so when I'm actually on calls, I feel like I'm more almost like a channel more than I am like, oh my gosh, here's the exact step by step things on the call. It's more like, okay, let's work through this. Let's work through that. How is that feeling for you? Where are you feeling in your body? And it's more of just like an intuitive sort of flow with my calls. And so that's where that word like cosmic comes in. And my free community is called the Cosmic Connection Coven, because I feel like, we really want like this like safe kind of container that's like all inclusive and all about connection, because the opposite of this addiction to social media is connection, real connection, right? We feel like sometimes that is a real connection, and it can be if we actually, get on a call with a person. And like, I have friends from social media who have actually been really wonderful friends for years who I've only known through Zoom, and, it's one of those things where I feel, building connections is really important. And so we have like a book club in there where people can hop on and talk about books, and people can have free space to be able to share things. And it's really cool because there's also an audio chat on there too. So people can actually hear each other's voice, which is really, really powerful and very, and a little bit different than, other platforms. Like on a Facebook group, they don't have like an audio chat, and so it's a little bit different. But because people use pen names also, there's a little bit of that anonymity, is that the word? Anonymity, I guess, and anonymousness. But it's one of those spaces where people can actually feel a sense of that safety, right? I mean, we live in a world where there isn't a lot of spaces that we can feel safer. It's like, I don't even want to leave my house right now, because it's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what's going on in the world. So we don't always live in a space, and especially if someone is walking in a Black or brown body, especially for, the queer community, there's not often spaces where people can actually express how they feel. And my community, it's been really interesting. I've seemed to attract a lot of transgender people into my community, a lot of non-binaries, NBs are what they call us. So the NBs are in there, and it's really cool to be able to have a space like that where people from any walk of life can come in and really share what they're going through, and say like, hey, like, this is something that came up for me, or I tried this meditation today and it was really cool. Like, I hope some of you join along, and really build a community of people who want to see each other thrive and want to see each other heal, and want to see each other have just a better life, even if it's just a little bit every day. It's all about moving towards having a wonderful, beautiful life, beautiful relationships, and better connection to ourselves and our own bodies.
Yeah. And this all sounds very sort of like holistic, sort of like a starseed, earth mama kind of stuff. You're also a pleasure activist. So, so what does that mean?
Yeah, so that means I'm a person where I believe if anybody reads my content, comes into contact with me, they are going to feel like pleasure is important. Like, and this should be something that in our society, we shouldn't have to be ashamed of our pleasure. We need to like dismantle the shame around pleasure. It shouldn't be where people are scared to go online and buy a sex toy. Like, even not even just sex toys, but even just like something that gives them joy. Like, people are even ashamed of, buying something that just brings them some happiness,
like it does, right?
Yeah.
Or even people are ashamed of sleeping a full 8 hours.
Yeah.
Which you feel great.
Yeah. There's so many things that people feel ashamed about around their pleasure, around their joy. And, as an activist, like, I genuinely believe that there are even social structures that need to be worked on so that people can have more joy. And in my activism work, I offer like free breathwork sessions for people that are part of nonprofit organizations and working through mutual aid and things like that, so that people can start regulating their nervous system and feeling a little bit better. Like if I could just help people feel a little bit better, then I'm doing my job here. And that's part of the pleasure activism, is really just helping people tap into what pleasure means for them. It's so different. The definition is different for everyone. Some people, they love taking a bite of chocolate. Other people, they're like, ugh, right? So it's like, it's so different for each person. Pleasure is so different for each person. And so it's helping them figure out what pleasure really means for them. And that's the part of the activism. And it's really just so important for me to help people not have shame around that pleasure.
So if you could, we're nearing the end of our time. I want to be mindful that you have something after this. What is the maybe one or more than one, if it needs more than one, but what would be like the one question we can ask ourselves to help us figure out what pleasure means to us?
I mean, the one question I guess would be is, how do I feel in my body right now? And just asking yourself that every single day, sitting down and journaling, saying, how do I feel in my body right now? And then there's no such thing, like, to me, so people are like, oh, well, what about like negative emotions? I don't really like the word negative, because our emotions are meant to guide us. I feel like they're a guidance system. So I don't really feel like there's a negative emotion, but it's like, even if you are feeling like, oh, I feel so down in the dumps today, and that's really how you feel, just notice that. I feel down in the dumps today. Right? Like it doesn't have to be judgment. Like, a big old thing like, oh, what does this mean? Like all this sort of stuff. It's like, that's life. We're humans. We're humans. And so giving yourself that question helps you feel that human experience again.
Slowing the F down, is that available right now?
Yes. So people can purchase anytime. We have the new round starting in January that I'm super excited about. And it's $333 for the whole year. So it's a really affordable price. And I do offer, payment plans and scholarships. So if anybody emails me or sends me a message on Instagram and they need a scholarship, I pretty much allow anybody in, just because I'm an activist. I want everybody to have access to this, right? So that's just on my website, kimraluna.com. That's KIMRALUNA.com. And there's a little button that says slowing the F down. And you can literally click there, learn about it. And my new podcast just came out, the Riot Doll podcast. We talk about all things sex, love, relationships, and pretty much music, activism, all the stuff that I kind of want to talk about. I interview some really, really cool people. So our first season just dropped. A bunch of episodes are going to be trickling out soon. So Riot Doll podcast. And then if anybody has any questions for me, you can always hit me up on Instagram. I'm just Kimra Luna over there, KIMRALUNA. And yeah, I would love to support whoever's listening to feel more pleasure in their lives.
One last question, because as we go through the labyrinth, it's release, receive, return. And when we return, that's when we integrate everything into, our lives. And how can we integrate a little more pleasure into our lives?
I mean, there's a lot of ways, but I think a big piece of it is just sitting down and recognizing what we're grateful for in our lives, because those are typically the first things that give us pleasure. And so that gives us that first indication of like, oh, I do experience pleasure, because sometimes we think we don't. But if we look at the things we're genuinely grateful for, those are typically the things that give us pleasure.
Kimra Luna, thank you so much for walking the labyrinth with me, for chatting with our audience, for being you.
Well, thank you for having me.
And thank all of you for listening. If you liked this podcast, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at beckybrett.live for daily inspiration, information, and support. If you're looking for a coach, the link to my application is in the show notes, and I can't wait to hear from you. Enjoy the journey, everyone, and remember, you can lose yourself in a maze, but you can find yourself in a labyrinth.